The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sprawling fields where countless lives had been lost. It was the early days of the American Revolutionary War, a time when courage and sacrifice were not just virtues but necessities for survival. Among the ranks of the Continental Army stood a young soldier named Samuel Hayes, whose bravery would etch his name into the annals of history. Samuel was not born a soldier. He was a blacksmith by trade, a man of humble beginnings from a small village in Pennsylvania. But when the call to arms came, he could not ignore the pull of duty. The British forces were advancing, and the dream of a free America hung by a thread. Samuel knew that freedom demanded action, and so he left behind his forge, his family, and the life he had known to fight for a cause greater than himself. The battlefield was a far cry from the quiet forge where Samuel once hammered out horseshoes and tools. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder, and the sounds of musket fire and cannon blasts echoed across the fields. Men fell around him, their cries of pain mingling with the shouts of orders and the chaos of war. Yet, through it all, Samuel remained steadfast, his musket steady and his resolve unshaken. One fateful day, Samuel's regiment was tasked with defending a crucial bridge that the British sought to capture. It was a narrow passage over a raging river, the only route for miles that could support the movement of artillery and supplies. If the bridge fell, the Continental Army would be cut off, leaving them vulnerable to a devastating defeat. The British forces arrived in overwhelming numbers, their red uniforms stark against the greenery of the surrounding forest. Samuel and his comrades, outnumbered and outgunned, dug in their heels and prepared to defend the bridge at all costs. Their commander, Colonel Everett, addressed them with a somber yet inspiring speech. "Men," he began, his voice firm despite the tension in the air, "we stand here not just as soldiers, but as defenders of liberty. If we hold this bridge, we hold the hope of a free nation. Remember why you fight. Remember what's at stake. Now, stand your ground and give them everything you've got." The battle that followed was one of sheer ferocity. The British advanced in disciplined lines, their muskets firing in unison. Samuel fired shot after shot, reloading with practiced precision. He felt the ground shake as cannonballs struck nearby, sending up showers of dirt and debris. Around him, his fellow soldiers fought with equal determination, their faces grim but resolute. As the hours dragged on, the situation grew dire. The British forces pressed closer, their superior numbers threatening to overwhelm the defenders. Samuel's musket jammed, and he was forced to draw his bayonet, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat. He parried a strike from a British soldier and countered with a thrust that felled his opponent. But there was no time to rest. Another enemy was already upon him. In the heat of battle, Samuel noticed a group of British soldiers attempting to set charges to destroy the bridge. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he shouted to his comrades, "They're trying to blow the bridge. Stop them." With no time to wait for reinforcements, Samuel charged toward the group, his bayonet gleaming in the sunlight. He was joined by a handful of fellow soldiers who had heard his call. Together, they fought their way through the enemy ranks, their determination driving them forward despite the odds. Samuel reached the soldiers planting the charges and engaged them in fierce combat. He managed to disarm one and knock another into the river below. Just as he thought they had succeeded, a British officer appeared, his pistol aimed directly at Samuel. Time seemed to slow as Samuel braced himself for the inevitable. A shot rang out, and the British officer fell. Samuel turned to see his friend and fellow soldier, Corporal James Carter, standing with a smoking musket. James grinned through the blood and grime on his face. "Can't let you have all the glory, Sam," he said. Together, they secured the bridge, extinguishing the threat of the explosives. Their actions turned the tide of the battle, and the Continental Army managed to repel the British forces. As the sun set over the battlefield, the bridge still stood, a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the defenders. In the aftermath of the battle, Samuel sat by the river, his body aching and his mind heavy with the memories of the day. Colonel Everett approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did well, Hayes, the colonel said. Your actions today saved countless lives and ensured that we can continue the fight for freedom. You're a hero, whether you see it or not. Samuel shook his head, his gaze fixed on the water. I'm no hero, sir. I'm just a man who did what had to be done. But history would remember Samuel Hayes as more than just a man. His courage and selflessness became the stuff of legend, inspiring future generations to stand up for what they believed in. The story of the battle for the bridge was told and retold, a symbol of the indomitable spirit that defined the fight for American independence. Years later, as an old man, Samuel would sit by his forge, telling the tale to his grandchildren. His voice carried the weight of experience, and his eyes held the glimmer of pride and sorrow. Freedom isn't free, he would say. It's paid for with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Remember that always. And so, the tale of an American war and the story of a brave soldier lived on. A reminder of the courage it takes to fight for a dream and the enduring legacy of those who dared to stand their ground.